If you can't be friends with this person, then you can't be in a relationship with them. We've been thrown into this human experience, into this world where culture and everyone in society is telling us that we're not enough, we're not good looking enough, we're not rich enough. Like, even I was thinking the other day, man, of a woman being like, hey, I want to talk to the last 3 women you've dated, asking a man that. Before we commit to each other, I need to talk to your last 2 girlfriends.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Talk Relationships. I am so honored to have today's guest on. We met, I would say it's probably been like 2 years ago, just by chance at an event that he was emceeing at. His name is BC Serna, and he's a men's conscious coach. And I'm so happy to have you on, BC.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Yeah, what a small world that, over I don't think it was 2, maybe 2 years, a year and a half, but
yeah.
And it was funny. I wasn't even supposed to MC that event. It was like last second, and it kind of just happened. But it was all synchronistic. It was wild how it happened.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was so crazy. I was with some friends, and one of them was like, "Oh, she's starting a podcast." And by this point, I was like, "Wait, guys, I haven't like fully it's an idea."
If someone tells me that they have some idea for something creative, I run a million miles an hour with it, and I encourage it, and I pour gas on that fire. So you were like, yeah, I think about starting a podcast, or your friend who said that, and I was just like, let's go.
Yeah, you literally were like, yeah, I'm going to announce it. Let's go. Like, you were just so into it. And I was like, I'm like internally terrified because I was like, I was finally putting it out into the world that I wanted to do this, that like first step of faith. And it was just so funny. And then I started following him on Instagram, and I was like, wow, I really love your work. I had no idea when I met you that you actually were doing all of this men's work and coaching. And, I had no idea. But then kind of started following you, and I was like, wow, like love his work, love his perspective on things. And it's been cool to kind of see even you push even more into what you're doing. I feel like in the last 2 years, you've pushed even more into it. So it's been really cool to see your content kind of shift as well. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it's always shifting for sure. It's always a smorgasbord of new ideas and concepts, but
yeah, no, I love that. But I'm excited to chat today. I'd love to hear more too about kind of how you even got into coaching, and what was your journey like with growth and development, and feeling the call to do what you're doing, because it feels like a calling to you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I never in a million years would have considered myself some sort of personal development coach or mentor. It's been a long journey. I'm 36 now. I started doing this when I was 19 years old. I started traveling the world and working with nonprofits and college students. And then at one point I traveled the world for like 3 years and helped humanitarian crisis like all around the world. And from 19 to like 22 to 23. And after doing that for a while, I was like, all right, I want to go do whatever the biggest need in the entire world is. And so I prayed, and I was like, all right, God, tell me whatever the biggest need is. I'm going to go do it. And I thought it was going to be like helping orphans in Asia or clean water in Africa. Like, I thought it was all these grandiose things. And God spoke really clearly. He's like, go back home to America and work with young adults, youth, like high school kids.
Wow.
And I was like, that seems like the least cool thing in the entire world. I do not want to move back to the U.S. Like, because I dropped out of college. I was never good in school. And so there was just so much excitement traveling the world. So when God told me to move back to America, I was like, no way. That doesn't sound exciting at all. So anyway, did it. So I moved back to my parents' basement at like 22, 23 years old, and just started mentoring high school kids. And basically, and the reason that is because I believe our purpose is found in our pain. And when I started traveling the world at 19 years old, I never had a mentor in high school. I never knew about passion. I never knew about purpose. I never knew about humanitarian work. I never knew about volunteering. All I knew in high school was sports and academics.
Yeah.
And I was horrible at both of those pretty much. And so for me, I was just a failure. I failed it. I wasn't supposed to fit into this life. I almost went to the military, because I just didn't fit in academics or sports. And so when I discovered the truth about the world, that there's way bigger pictures, purpose, passions, helping people, volunteering, I felt like I needed to go back and be the person I wish I had in high school. So I started mentoring high school kids. I became a young life leader for inner city kids. And so I moved to like the hood of Denver, Colorado, and mentored a group of like 40 inner city kids for 4 or 5 years. And so it's been a long journey, but I guess in a nutshell, I spent all of my 20s mentoring thousands of high school kids. And naturally, at 30 years old, I realized there was more people I can help if I became like, I guess, a mentor or a coach,
Yeah.
in the industry of personal development.
Mhm.
So it naturally was just kind of handed to me. I never pursued being a coach. I never pursued being like a speaker. It just kind of naturally came because I was serving people and I had a
Mhm.
story from serving people. And so, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. What did you feel like you learned most with youth? Like I feel like what were the things you were seeing in these children that you were like, and 'cause they're still children, but young adults, that just kind of shaped your perspective in your 20s?
Um, that's a great question. Yeah, I think high school kids, they just feel so left out. They
Mm,
just feel so like misheard. They're, in America, there's no really initiation from when a boy becomes a man. Women have
yeah.
their cycles, women have like their periods at one point. And so women start to have a little bit more self awareness of their bodies and
Mhm.
they're maturing. And with boys, there's no initiation, there's no transfer of energy. And so
Mm,
boys are just constantly um, hard on themselves, and the world's really hard on them. And they don't know what to do with their anger. They don't know what to do with their sadness. They don't know what to do with their sexuality. They don't know what to do with their expression.
mhm.
And so they resent, they build it up, they hold on to it, and they become a little bit more dangerous in the sense. And so I think giving young kids, young students, awareness is everything. Just mentorship. They
Mm,
don't really they have their parents, which their parents don't care about their happiness. The parents care about their grades and them surviving in life. And
yeah.
their teachers care about their grades and them going to college. And so they really don't have a third party adult that can just love them and nourish them and encourage
Mm,
them from a safe environment. And so when they finally have that third person adult, a mentor, they can kind of reside in asking questions about life or their bodies or about
yeah.
love or about God or whatever it is. And so just I think everyone in their 20s should go mentor high school kids for sure.
That's
And
awesome.
every high school kid listening to this should go find a mentor.
I mean, I think about when I was in high school, it's like I didn't have that either. I think that was always like I tried to get that from like bosses at work. Like I'd even be at a restaurant and it's like, like wherever I was working, I feel like I'd always try and get some sort of mentorship or something from wherever I was at. Work, teachers, it's like it's crazy to think about that. We really were seeking that when we were younger. So how did that
Yeah.
transition into your men's coaching?
I mean, once you work with, 10,000 young men, it kind
Yeah.
of just
You see
naturally
the
evolves.
patterns.
I mean, what?
So you see the patterns, I'm sure that you've seen.
Patterns. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
also my own masculinity. I think I've done so much deep work within myself, revealing my own shadows and my own traumas and my own stories that naturally I created an abundance of experience in my life that men it became natural to me because I've done it
Mhm.
for so long. But then men started being like, yo, how do you do that? How do you communicate? Or how do you express? Or how do you cry? Or how do you find your woman? Like, so I think it just naturally happened where there was a space where men wanted to talk about these things and figure out my own process. And so it became natural, I guess, once again, like becoming a men's coach or
Yeah.
just my own journey of what I thought a man was and how I failed as a man and how I learned as a man.
Yeah. It's funny because I just did an episode, which was so fascinating to me, was last week, which if you're listening to this, last week's episode, 2025, it was about No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it kind of talks a little bit about like just this upside down view that we sometimes have of like masculinity and of um what it is to be, to be a man and to be a man in today's society. Like what was your journey with that? Like growing into that. I mean, obviously that you've mentored, I think that's such a huge thing and that probably changed your perspective a lot. But um, how did it start to kind of click for you too, as you were, going through your own journey?
Yeah, I think just when we make mistakes as men, when we feel resistance within our job, when we feel
Uh,
resistance within the experience we're having with the feminine,
mhm.
we at one point get sick of our own shit and we get our
Yeah.
head of our ass and we're just like, wait, why am I jealous? Why am I insecure? Why
Hmm.
don't I respect women? Why don't I attract the right woman? Why, so I think we just get really frustrated and I mean, maturing, we hopefully look at we're the problem. I think a lot
Yeah.
of sometimes we can bypass as men and
Yes.
be like, man, all the women I date are crazy. All the women I date are emotional. All the women I date, we can give so many stories of
100%.
projecting.
And we do that as women
And
too, though. I see it so much. Like we want to
totally.
project outward, and it's like, oh, it's all the guys I'm seeing. Oh, it's the dating scene. Oh, it's XYZ,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So I think at one point, hopefully, what the biggest thing is, yeah, at one point you just go, oh, it's me, like,
Yeah.
and what I've noticed, 80% of all the men I've ever coached and worked with, over thousands of men, most of them start their healing journey when they lose a woman.
Mm.
So they finally, this woman that they're dating, it's like they got her and she loves him and she's patient with him and she sees potential in him. And he just decides subconsciously, he goes, oh, I already have her. So I don't really have to read the book she's
Mm.
asking. I don't really have to go to the seminar. I really don't have to go to couples counseling. I don't have to do these things because I already have my woman. And so men sometimes lose the drive to evolve and elevate. And so when the woman checks out, she's checked
Mm.
out. And
There's
when
no
she
coming
finally makes
back.
that decision, the man goes, whoa, okay, fine. I'll read the book. I'll go to the seminar. I'll go to therapy. And she's like, no, I'm done. I've been asking you for a year to do that. And I'm checked out. And then she leaves. He has his coming to God moment on his knees. And he's like, oh, this is the worst pain in the entire world. I could have had her. I freaking did have her. And I didn't listen to her. And that's when a lot of men start to see some shadows and get some answers to the questions they've been asking.
Yeah. I've even had friends on here that we talked about kind of as they walk through divorce, and so much of the story is that. It's like I hear that story over and over. They're like, I love him, but like he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to grow. He doesn't want to go to therapy. He doesn't, isn't willing to do that sort of work. And it's so hard to watch because you're like, you have it. Like now it's how do you foster it? How do you,
Yeah.
like there's so much more work that has to be done when you're in the relationship, not just to get it, but it's to maintain it and to grow it and to, it's like a plant. You
Oh, yeah. Oh,
water
love
it
is
and
the
then
easy part.
yeah,
I
falling
tell
in love
everyone,
is the romance is the easy
yeah.
part.
Oh, yeah. Love is the easiest part of it all. People think that's like the best part is the chemistry and the love. And it's like, no, that's the easiest part. Good sex is the easy part. Love is the easy part. It's really down to the mundane
Mm-hmm.
humbling of the ego and really like grounding yourself in the human experience that we have shadows, they have shadows,
Mm-hmm.
but can we continually die to the ego? And
Yeah.
I think right now what's happening in this self-realization, self-empowerment movement, I
Mm-hmm.
have a social media following, I have the doors are endless, especially LA,
Yeah.
is we're very hard to swallow the ego. We're very hard to
Mm-hmm.
swallow the pill because we're like, wait, I can date 10 girls like you, or like there's a girl out there that would, and so, or like I have an online community,
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy to not have to die to yourself, every single day because it's like exhausting some days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. And we create these worlds where we don't have to. Like, yeah, it's you just cancel it and move on, You don't have to dig in, you don't have to press in. And I see that even in our friendships, I think everything becomes more disposable, you know?
Exactly.
How do you think this is impacting, like, obviously we talk about LA and our dating lives out here. Like, let's be real, like we've talked about this a ton here. It's like everyone's like, oh, it sucks, and a big part of me starting this podcast was like, well, how, like, let's like dig down a little deeper into this. Like, you know, why does it suck so much? Why is
Yeah.
it actually so hard? And I think a lot of people always say it's, we have so many choices, we have so many options with online dating and the next. And I believe that to be true. I think there's a part in us that's like, oh, but I like you said, I can find someone that will be willing to do that. I can find, and I think the hard part is at what point do you choose, yes, this is my person and this is the person I'm willing to go deeper with. I'm willing to work through hard things with, like, I think that's like one question is like, how do we know that moment? And how is like our just, so many options and choice affecting how we show up in dating?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I think everything is a mirror pointing back to ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we sometimes get really nervous about our purpose, and our
Yeah.
purpose is the fuel that drives our entire soul forward. We have a reason for being on earth. We have a reason for being here. We have a purpose that's bigger than us. And when we are intimidated or scared to pursue our purpose, we pursue people and we pursue relationships
Ooh.
so they can coddle us because we don't feel like there's parts of us that we can love because we are so, focused on ourselves instead of others. And so I think, we're just extremely hyper focused, which is, I guess you could say it's survival,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's you're in fight or flight. Like we've been thrown into this human experience, into this world where culture and everyone in society is telling us that we're not enough, we're not good
Mm-hmm.
looking enough, we're not rich enough, we're not fit enough, and we are so distracted on the external that we become really insecure on the internal, right? And so when we
Yeah.
find love, we're like, oh man, this is what I need, not realizing, it's we need to love ourselves. We need to allow God to like really infiltrate our hearts. And so yeah, so dating is beautiful because it's all medicine. So anyone
Mm-hmm.
that you're dating and you're experiencing, you magnetize them into your life naturally and they're there to teach you something.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't need to shame dating or control it or manipulate it. I think a lot of the times we are trying to put it in boxes because
Mm-hmm.
we have jealousy, we have insecurity, we have questions, we have, if we allow our brain to dictate our life, we will fail. Like we'll fail at our job, we'll fail at our love, we'll fail at the way we look. But if
Yeah.
we really allow our heart to look at people and look at them in beautiful ways, that it's not just I want to take sex from them or love from them or I want to take from them, I want them to give me something. But when you meet someone, to fall naturally in love with them, and if there's romance involved, amazing, but the foundation should just be I fucking love this person,
Mm-hmm.
and that's regardless
Yeah.
if I get to be in a relationship with them. And a lot of times we're just really insecure, and so we rush relationships or we try to control the person,
Mm-hmm.
and it just is a slippery slope.
Gosh, you said so many amazing things in there, but it's so like I think we also try to control the outcome. And I think that's what makes
Yeah,
dating hard because I think we go in with it thinking, "Oh, is this my husband? Is this my future? Is this?" And
totally.
we're trying to pull something out of it, trying to pull meaning out of it, trying to pull purpose out of it, you know? But to fit our own agenda, not to just let it be for what it is, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And let it, yeah, I think the organicness of it, we
Mm-hmm.
when we try to control it, the more insecure we are with ourselves, the more faster we want to control
Yeah.
it and rush it. It's like, oh, let's
Yes.
be exclusive. And if you don't have those that 90-day grace period of just like letting it breathe, like if you can't be friends with this person, then
Mm-hmm.
you can't be in a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us get in relationships with people we probably wouldn't be friends with.
100%.
And that's just like the biggest, experience of just like, wait, like if you can't be friends with them, what are you trying to do? And so, yeah, just
That's my biggest red flag nowadays. I think that as I'm dating is someone trying to rush. I'm like, what's the rush? Like,
yeah, you're
they
too
get to
mature for that
it's
now.
yeah, I'm like, oh, like see, this is like you get healed and then you see things you can't unsee anymore.
Yeah,
And then you're like, oh, that makes it a lot harder
I know.
for
I'm
other
glad I
reasons.
waited. Yeah, I wait. For me, I was in a contract with God where I was like, my person either has to be perfect or I'm gonna be single the rest of my life, and not in like a like they don't never can have a flaw.
Yeah.
But it was just I was so self-contained in my purpose, and yes, I did like want a person, but I never. Every time my head went that way, I really
Mm-hmm.
tried to continue to stay straight on my purpose. And I had mentors in my life that didn't meet their wives until they were 35, 37,
Huh.
30, Donna Miller, like all these, like Bob Goff, like all these
Yeah.
incredible men that like really didn't start until they were like, mid to end of their 30s, even
Mm-hmm.
early 40s. And I remember just because their culture was teaching us 20s.
Yeah, dude, I
And
know.
and then you see people you look up to and you're like, wait, they didn't get married till they were 40, or they had a
Mm-hmm.
divorce, so they probably didn't want to get married in their 20s. Like, so yeah, just the patience is crucial. It's worth the wait because you've never been married.
I've never been married.
Oh wow, amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
See, to think about like how many women in their 30s have already gotten divorced, like it's
Oh,
insane.
yeah, no, yeah. I know quite a handful,
Yeah,
and
same.
it's I'm thinking like I think about who I was in my 20s. Oh my God, I didn't know who I was. I think the beauty of being older now and obviously getting married, I'll be getting married older. I feel so much more settled,
Yeah,
and every year like the thing I've been working on a lot this year is really sitting back and questioning my motives behind a lot of things. I think in your 20s, you're just like, go, travel, do, duh. You're just constant. You just got to level up and one up everything, your work, your social life, every aspect. And I carried that a lot into my 30s, and I realized how exhausted I was by it. I had to be the fashion person. I had to be the one that traveled. I had to be the one that did this, that danced, that learned this, that did this, that cooked, that like just all these things that like I put on myself. No one was telling me I needed to be these things. I just was like, these are part of my identity. This is who I am. And it felt like bricks on my back that I was carrying into this new decade,
Yeah.
And this last year, I've just been like, what am I doing? I am exhausted, Like carrying all these things that I had to be. And God really humbled me recently. Like I had some quiet time with him, which I struggle with, but we're really trying. And
Yeah, LA's tough.
oh man, it's so hard. And because there's so much fun to do. Like it's not inherently bad. I love being around people. I love new activities and all of that. But I think when it becomes a burden and it becomes exhausting, like it's a problem, and it's becoming part of your identity. But God really, he gave me a vision of Martha and Mary. Like I remember I had quiet time and I was like, Lord, and it was like, Martha and Mary, you're Martha. I was like, damn it.
Nice.
And I went and read it, and Martha's the one in the kitchen, like doing all the thing, and she's telling Jesus, like, why is Mary at your feet? Like, come have her help me do all this stuff. And he goes, no, Martha, you're distracted. And what Mary's doing is more important. And it was the most like, I was like, oh, and I think I sat in that for weeks. I was like, and I started questioning everything, every activity I've done, like it's just everything, even like planning a trip. I felt like I needed to plan a trip, not because like I wanted to go on the trip, but just because like I needed to have something planned. Like it was so interesting to see my motives behind everything. So all to say, I think in my 30s now, I am feeling more and more settled and not feeling like I have to do all these things to be this doer. And I think that's a protective part. Like I've, read a lot about it. Like as you're a doer, you're the perfectionist. It's a part of you that you're trying to protect yourself in some way, trying to belong at the
Totally.
same time. It's like trying to protect, but also be a part of something. So it's been an interesting journey, kind of realizing that and really sitting with it and really, again, asking the
Yeah.
why. Why do I do this? Why am I this way? And why does it feel so heavy?
Well, it's returning back to your feminine, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
returning back to your womb. It's
Oh, yeah.
you entered into the fire of the masculine patriarchy or whatever you want to call it, the
Mm-hmm.
structure of society more and more and more. They don't the 40-hour work week doesn't honor your womb. It doesn't honor your feminine energy. It doesn't honor your
Mm-mm.
cycles. And so it's out of balance.
Yeah.
And so when women decide that they're exhausted and they're going to return back to the cycles of their body, the cycles of nature, the cycles of the divine,
Mm-hmm.
they can seem ashamed or embarrassed or feel like they're failures because they're not doing 40 hours a week or
Mm-hmm.
not pulling $1 million a year, whatever it is. I don't have a house yet. I don't have a family yet.
Yeah.
But right now, the renaissance of women returning back to their feminine, realizing that they hold all the codes, they hold all the secrets, and they know what the fire feels like. They know what making money feels like. They know what
Mm-hmm.
feeling in power feels like, which is amazing. Women need to have that kind of leverage over their sovereignty. But then when they return back home to their bodies, they can actually trust God so much more. And it's like in flow of the river of like, all right, let me just trust again. Let me find
Mm-hmm.
balance. Let me find harmony. And through that, in my feminine rest, I will find my masculine fire. I'll find my
Mm-hmm.
masculine power. But the structure of women trying to over stimulate themselves to find their man, the man subconsciously loves a woman that's empowered for sure. But when she's so in her fire, it's hard for him to feel like she's nurturing in a sense, and
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's wild, and it's funny because I've been thinking a lot about that too. Like, I've always been the hard worker, that go after the career, do all that, and even that I've been questioning. Like, but what for? Like, what am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to like be? I don't, I climb the corporate ladder, and then what? Like, what's the end? Like, you start to realize you're chasing all these things, and you realize at the end, you're like, what am I chasing? Like, what is it all for at the end of the day? And I think you talk a
totally.
lot about purpose, and I think that is so vital. Like you said, you were really chasing your purpose before you really met somebody. Like you were like, this is what I'm called to do. And I think some of us are just chasing all the wrong things.
Yeah, well, we're trying to stay busy. We're trying
Mm-hmm.
to, we're trying to keep up with, we're trying to figure it out. Everyone's trying their best,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
everyone's really
Yeah.
trying to figure it out. But, the cathartic energy of you starting this podcast is very like, it's because you're masculine, you were able to start this podcast. It was because your confidence of what you've done, hosting events and everything you've ever done. And so now you're just using what you learned in the matrix for your purpose and for
Mm-hmm.
your soul. And so you're just bringing harmony back into the pendulum shift of your balance. And that's, where we're all at, the Renaissance, where, yeah, women are frustrated. Dating is weird. Dating is like almost like hostile some days, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, I don't even know who to trust anymore. And so yeah, I think everything is cathartic in its sense of when we're learning to do things. But then yeah, it's all leading back to helping people with their pain. That's what our purpose
Yeah.
is, right? So we're just like, what was the hardest part of my life, and how can I go help people that are going through something similar? And that is how we return back home to our purpose, to our path of, I really want to, it's all about people, right? It's all about
Yeah.
serving. And the further away from our purpose we are, the more we gossip, the more we date unhealthy, the more we, indulge in maybe unhealthy things. But yeah, returning back to the purpose is the path.
Yeah. How do you think that plays into finding your partner? I think when we talk about purpose, because I feel like it's vital to at least understand what you're put on this earth to do before you decide who is going to be alongside with you, doing it with you.
I mean, I don't know about women, but I'm guessing I can assume that one of the most attractive things in a person is someone that's aligned with their purpose, right? So someone who cares about something more than themselves.
Yeah.
You can see the illusion of the ego kind of fade away when it's like, oh, this person, it's bigger than them.
Yeah.
And this life is bigger. It's not about consumption. It's not about taking sex, taking money, taking from people. It's about giving love, giving
Yeah.
life, giving hope. And so I think when a partner sees their person either in hopes of pursuing that or really pursuing that, it's just like probably one of the most attractive things, and I think women, I'm guessing, want more than anything a man that is aligned with his purpose, because how he shows up to his purpose is how he's going to show up to her. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of women think that they want to be number one, but in reality, they want his purpose to be number one. And they want him to choose his purpose because that is truly how he's going to commit to her, to the family, to everything. And yeah.
Yeah. It's like spot on of what women really, I think, what we deeply desire in a man. And like I mentioned earlier, that book that we talked about in the last podcast, so much of it was, the Mr. Nice Guy thinks that he needs to put her first, put her on the pedestal, do all the things for her, bow down to her, like, and we actually feel repulsed by that. Like a lot of the time, our energy is like, oh, this feels like this is too much. And so much of it is more, we want to see, how is he leading his life? Is he following what he's meant to do on this earth? Is he who he really is? Like, is he being authentic in his masculine? Is he being authentic in who God created him to be? Like, does he know who he is? That is one of the most attractive things, I think, in a man, is someone who knows who they are and they're solid in it and they're content in it.
Totally.
It is
Yeah,
game changer when you meet someone like that.
yeah, I mean, yeah, self-aware, right? Super, super honest and vulnerable, where they, I was thinking the other day, I was gonna make an Instagram reel about this,
Mm-hmm.
where the hardest part of a woman's life is gonna be the shadow of her man. And
Mm.
so, like, really thinking that
Wow.
every man,
That's
yeah, the that's gonna be the beast that she has to slay is the shadow of the man. And so if
mm-hmm.
he hasn't done shadow work, if he isn't aware of his shadow, then I hope the woman came prepared, because that's going to be the hardest part of her entire life, is really trying to figure out where this dragon is residing within him. And if
Mm-hmm.
he's not aware and honest, then it's going to be just a really steep hill for that woman. And that's, yeah, that's not a woman's role or job, but
No.
that's going to be the hardest part of the relationship.
And so many are left with that. And I don't think they even recognize when they get into the relationship and the marriage that that's now what they have to do.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't
100%.
expecting to go to battle. They were expecting to kind of, sit more and, like we said, in their feminine energy. And the best thing you could do, I think, for a relationship is to look inward. That's probably one of the most important qualities I think I'd be looking for in somebody. Is like,
Yeah,
are
and
they self-aware? Do they know themselves? Period. Are they walking in their purpose? Are they walking, toward what they're called to do?
mhm. Yeah.
And that's so
Yeah,
hard.
and LA is even I mean, LA is the steepest hill in the entire world to date. It's I was in it for a long time, and it's just so magnetizing and incredible, beautiful people, and so much going on, so many, like, there's 4 events every single night,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's so hard, especially for men. I think women obviously can commit a little bit easier because they're emotionally tied, but for men, it is very hard for a man in LA to find his footing into what's the point? Like, why would I commit when I'm free? This is like Peter Pan land. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, women are only getting younger and more beautiful here, and I'm in this flow of Peter Pan-ness, right? It's LA. And so I, in January of 2021, during COVID, I built out like a van and I went to the desert, and I spent 40 days off social media, and I spent 40 days in the desert by myself, and just had to leave LA in order to get my head above water. And God told me who my person was while I was in the desert. And so, yeah, thank God I left LA. It really helped.
I was going to ask you, like, what's your story with you? And I love watching you and your kids online,
Isa,
and it just, yeah, and your wife, like, there, there just feels like there's such synergy, but also like, I know it's through video, but like this like calmness between you two, like just this like I don't describe it, but it just feels so genuine.
peaceful. Yeah.
Yeah, like peace. That's the word, peaceful. That's like the
Yeah.
essence I get of you two. But what's your story? So you went to the
Yeah. So
desert.
yeah. So she was so when I met her, I used to host events in Venice all the time,
Hmm.
and she came to one, and she lived in another community house in the Palisades, and she had a boyfriend when I met her, but which I was like stoked about. I was like, oh great, she
Hmm.
has a boyfriend. That's cool. There's no pressure.
Yeah.
And so then we just became really good friends, and
Hmm.
like it just naturally, her community house, my community house, and then she broke up with her boyfriend, and we kind of I was definitely still a young man in LA, like
Hmm.
I was really focused on my purpose, and I didn't date for like I went through a heartbreak, I think at 28, like my own Saturn return
Hmm.
heartbreak.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then I didn't date for like a year, and then started dating again. And then LA, you just can't, it's all too amazing. It's all too fun. And so she had feelings, but I kind of had feelings, but I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't figure it out. And so, yeah, when I went to the desert, God was just like, "Hey, dude, it's your best friend, you idiot."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh,
You're
it's
like,
my best friend. Yeah, that makes sense." And she didn't necessarily check all of the boxes that we sometimes project on who we want our person
Mhm.
to be. And I always tell people, I'm like, and I know there's like a way to manifest where you write down your list of
Yeah.
like, your green flags, but I really want people to dissolve that as much as possible and allow for God to humble you. And I'm always telling the women in my programs and I work with, they have this guy, I want him to be X, Y, and Z. And I always laugh, and I'm always like, I guarantee God is going to humble you, because he always does. God always
Hmm.
humbles us, this person, because we usually have our twin flame,
Hmm.
and our twin flame comes to us that checks all the boxes, and they're like, oh, this is amazing. Everything's amazing. Like, and then there's a whole burnout, and it's like this
Hmm.
explosion happens, and it's the hardest heartbreak we ever, and it's like toxic and unhealthy. And then you could say
Yeah.
our soulmate comes after our twin flame, where our soulmate humbles us, and it's usually the opposite spectrum of what we thought we wanted. Because usually the list that we have and what we think we want is created from our trauma, is created from our
Mm.
expectations, is created from who knows. If you really go deepward, you can find
Yeah.
out. And so yeah, it was just very humbling experience. But so then it was just, I was like, hey, do you want to leave LA and move in my van with me and live in my van? And she was like, I guess. I mean, it was actually much harder to convince her, but yeah. So then she moved in my van with me, and we just traveled the US hosting retreats, and then proposed on my birthday one year, and then we had a baby, and then had another baby. It was crazy.
Oh my God. That this all happened within like
Couple years,
couple
0 to
years.
100. Oh yeah,
Wow.
0. I mean, truly, I mean, I always wanted to definitely, at one point figure out how to become a dad and have a wife would be great. But my purpose was just it was the only thing I thought about every day.
Mm.
And so I didn't know where that would fit in. So naturally, as she came into my life, it just naturally happened, and it just kind of was easeful. And just, you got to do it with your best friend, someone you truly feel like is your ride or die, regardless of the attraction or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's crazy because I hear that. I've had a couple interviews already with people that have been married for even like 20 something years or 10 and they all say that. They're like, marry your best friend. They're like, because it's all about the small moments. It's the moments that you're doing grocery shopping. It's the moments you're putting the kids to bed. It's the, waking up early, doing the morning routines and watching your kids grow up and all of that. They're like, who do you want to do that with? Who do you want to do the mundane day-to-day life with?
Yeah, 100%.
And it's
Exactly.
not the I've seen the list, like must play pickleball, must be active in this specific way. It must be like, we get so
Yeah.
specific. I'm like,
Yeah, it sets you up. I mean, I understand why the women are doing this. They want high standards. They want high expectations because they don't want to play games. So I totally get
100%.
the focus of that. I just think we can also limit ourselves. Even Christian women, Christian women sometimes have this story of like, oh, I'm only going to date a Christian man. And I hear that and I get that, the values, and it kind of matches it up, but you still bottleneck yourself. Like, what if you meet this incredible man that just doesn't have that awareness yet, or that maybe like that spiritual connection yet, and maybe he has it in his own way, and yet you feel so connected, but he doesn't have the title of the dogma of, what this word, and maybe, it's deeper than that. But, just anything that kind of bottlenecks into a space where you could lose out on an experience because of the expectation our cultural ego has like projected, they're not,
yeah.
they don't. Yeah.
Well, and that's when I'm actually curious to go into that too, because I think for me, I've always gone in and I'm like, I want someone Christian, and like even more specific, I'm like, I want him to go to like a local church. I want him to be involved. I want, and yeah, I'm curious to hear you say the kind of be more open to, because obviously, it's like you're not equally yoked. Make sure you're on the same page about your faith, and that being a big value. I think that's something I always stand really strong behind.
Totally.
But I'm curious. I'm actually curious to hear more about that. Like why you think.
Well, I mean, how many men, how many men do we know that call themselves Christian but are assholes, right?
Oh,
That
I mean,
aren't too many.
look, I dated a lot of them. Let's be real.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Trust me. And so we're doing the same thing to ourselves, where they're just saying they're this thing, but on the reality they're not. And what if you met someone that was way more Christ-like, but didn't subscribe to the organized religion game of it all? And I'm saying this from experience. I thought in my head too, even though I'm not like the most religious person, I was a youth pastor for inner city kids. I've studied theology, and I'm really close to God and Jesus and Holy Spirit, but I'm never like really subscribed. I've been kicked out of a lot of churches because I ask questions and I challenge things. And so, but in this idea for me personally, so I'll just give my personal experience, is I thought she would have to have the same values. And my partner, Isa, is from the Middle East. And she was the closest thing I've ever met to the Holy Spirit, where she was the most kind, nurturing, loving human I've ever met in my entire life. But she didn't subscribe to this egoic term of Christianity. We don't even know what that word means anymore, because there's a lot of Christians that are assholes. So we don't even know what that word means. And so I almost lost sight of my person because of that box. And lo and behold, later on in life, I ended up baptizing her in the ocean, which was really cool. And
That's
she's
awesome.
on her own mission. But really, every single time you can start to die to this illusion more and more, even with ourselves in Christianity, even with ourselves and our political or religious affiliations, like it's all armor so that we can better understand the world. And I know a lot of people will be like, what about when you have kids and you guys don't have the same religion? There's so many games you can go down that. But what if you, like, the question I always ask Christians is like, what if you get married and then 5 years later, the woman's like, hey, I'm an atheist now? Well,
yeah.
okay.
That's the
Well,
risk you run.
I mean, yeah. And so the opposite is true. So if they're Buddhists or atheists, whatever, who knows, 3 years from now, they could actually find Jesus, So it's not about trying to control their spiritual experience and control what your kids are going to believe. But like, cause that's just like what do you mean you want to control what your kids believe? You want to give them values,
Uh-huh.
obviously, maybe, but like, I think everything is just based in this fear, this root of like, well, you have to marry this person because what about when you raise kids? What about when you have an argument and disagreement and you can't pray together? If you're not self-sufficient with God, if you're not sovereign with God yourself, then what, who cares if the person says they're Christian? And most men, I mean, I think, Christian men that are married divorce. I mean, they cheat on their wives all the time. And so, it's just this hard line of like, what are we looking towards when we put people in boxes?
Yeah. Wow. This is kind of challenging my mindset on this because I think that's something
Yeah,
I've
yeah. It's
always like I've held so fast to it. And I think obviously there's reason. I wouldn't just date like an atheist or someone who's like totally left field, but yeah, no, I don't know. This is kind of like this is giving me a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I appreciate it, but yeah, I think I'm always trying to invite people deeper into the and especially with dating with your person, just I think there's moments women potentially or people in general could be like, man, this person is it. They check every, but they're not a Christian or they're not this or they didn't vote this way or whatever it might
Hmm.
be. And you're just suffocating it. You're just like strangling this fluidness that like, what are we even doing with this game of like we get to dictate who is closer to God or which God is real, and with our if this person is Christ like and is like Holy Spirit essence, and then we're the fools, we're the fools, like we're the Pharisees that Jesus are
Yeah.
trying to warn us about.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many of us that I think that, like you said earlier, like the title of Christian is it's kind of been tainted, to be honest. Like I don't know. I especially over the last like 4 years, I'm like, whoo. It's been, regardless of what you believe and all that, but it's been people have stood behind it, but their lives don't reflect Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, it's really not that. Like, you literally read the Bible and you look at Jesus's life. Look how he lived. Look how he traveled. Look at his pace. Look at how he spoke. Like, that's being Christian. Like, that's Christianity. But I think we've made it, we've like insulted it in many ways. Like, we've turned it into something that it's not anymore?
Oh yeah, we've definitely hijacked it, and that's why it just comes down to actions, to heart,
Yeah.
where anyone can say whatever they want. That's why most people who don't partake in that game is just because they're just like sick of it. They like there's women who are probably like there's women who are Christian who are probably like, I'm never gonna date a Christian man ever again.
Hmm.
I've married two Christian men. I've got like Christian men have cheated on me, hurt me, abused me. Like I'm still close with Jesus, but I'm never dating. And like that's just their experience because they're over it. And so
Yeah.
just being, I think, open and like letting, just allowing just allowing it, because sometimes Christian women can restrict themselves and go like, yo, if he's not going to church, if he's not part of a men's group, if he's not this, but yet he's so connected to his purpose, he's so connected to God. It's just not the God. It's not the subscription that I'm subscribed to. It could throw off natural energy, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna have to pray about this. Laura, we're gonna
Yeah,
talk about
pray
this
about it.
later.
Yeah. A lot. I mean, and trust
We're
me,
gonna
most Christians are gonna disagree, which is totally fine.
Yeah. That's why
But
I love being able to have like these type of conversations. Like I think we don't know how to have these conversations where we don't think the same, where we're not on the same page. But it's
totally.
it's challenging and I think it's a good thing. Like I literally am gonna go chat with God later and be like, let's because I think I've met men that I'm like, wow, we are very aligned. We, in many different ways. But again, they're like spiritual, but they're not like Christian. They don't go to church. They don't know the thing. Um, and I've always written them off entirely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and I think the more, and the more confident and comfortable you are within your own prayer and within God, then it's not for us to dictate, it's us for us to
It's
just love
not.
them. And
Yeah. And I think when you're really connected with God and sometimes the things he tells you to do and directions to go, you're like, some people are like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And you're like, yeah, it's not supposed to make sense to you, you know,
right.
and
$100%.
being aligned with that. I'm curious in your relationship too, what would you say is like I want it's like your favorite part about your wife, like of your guys' dynamic together?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing when dating is it just needs to be easeful, and it just
Mm.
needs to be like not easy but easeful, where there is this just awareness that we're on the same team and that we are this. I think the biggest thing for me was she's from the Middle East
Mm-hmm.
and grew up in Lebanon and then moved here when she was like a teenager.
Mm.
But she vibrates at this frequency of gratitude because she came from a war-torn country.
Mm.
And I think when you find someone who vibrates at the frequency of gratitude, it's just it's such a blessing because like in
Mm-hmm.
America, we're very entitled. I think the opposite
Mm.
of gratitude is entitlement. And when you're not aware of the rest of the world, 60% of the world live on $1 a day, and we've won the lottery. We have clean water coming from our, sinks and whatever. We have hot showers, and the rest of the world doesn't have that, most of the world. And so when you vibrate this frequency of gratitude, you just naturally feel peaceful that like, man,
Mm.
God is giving me everything I can ever ask for. And when you operate from that perspective, it just makes life so much more fun because even the smallest things from like a meal that you're eating to the stars being pretty outside, you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing. You guys see the stars right now? You see the sunset? It just makes everything in life just more colorful and beautiful, and just gratitude's powerful.
Well, and that's what I see in the two of you. Like I was saying earlier, like when I look at your stories and you post things about your family, like you just, yeah, there's this playfulness, there's this peace that you can see, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Playfulness, humor is a big one. And yeah, humor is definitely a big one. And just playing. I think playing is the key, man. Dancing, laughing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the goal. The goal is to return back to our childlike selves. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Jesus taught. Jesus said there's no way anyone's entering the gates of heaven unless you have a childlike spirit,
Yeah.
which means playful, which means laughter, which means dancing, which means singing. And so if this person is helping you play more and become more in tune, because when you're playing, you're in the present moment. You're not thinking about what you don't have. You're not thinking
Yeah.
about what you don't look like. You are playfully enjoying this human experience. And so if you can find someone who sucks you into the present moment really well and plays with you, oh man, it's great.
It's like gold. Well,
Yeah.
and I think about too, like we were just talking about your wife being from the Middle East and her just totally different perspective. I think about that in our faith too. Like what do Christians look like across the world? You know? Like
Oh yeah.
it's so different. Like I think our American Christian faith is so I don't know. I'm like really thinking now. You've got me my mind rolling on that topic. I'm like, it's just so different. Like you think about Christians in the Middle East, Christians in, maybe war-torn countries. What does that look like? What does their faith look like? It's yeah, it's so
Well,
fascinating.
I've lived in over 80 countries around the world
You
with
live in
families,
80
and
countries?
yeah. Yeah, so I've lived with families, I lived with local
Mm-hmm.
families, I lived with Muslims, Buddhists, I've stayed with Buddhists in Japan and Thailand, and I studied I guess for me, I was just really fascinated by human experience. I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
what is this thing? Because there's no way the only people going to heaven are born in America and, like because they were born where they were born. So I was just fascinated on the human experience and really trying to understand every religion, every intention, every emotion. And so I've just been on a long journey for my life, just asking deeper questions. And and yeah, the dance with God is so personal. And the more words I think someone has to use to explain God is usually a reflection of the further away from God they are. I think
Mm.
the essence of someone of who they are and the way they don't gossip or complain or, like they just live in this state of gratitude and love. I think there's no words needed, right? There's very
Mm-hmm.
few words needed. And the way I determine God is someone asked me, someone's like, I used to, where do you go to church in LA?
Go to Vintage.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Do you know Whitney? Oh no, Vintage. You know
Whitney.
Sam. Oh no, I'm trying. I just like people go to Vintage. Do you know Kyle
La- I was I maybe I'll share last name on air.
from Ice Pass?
Maybe. Oh, I've never met him, but I know who you're talking about.
Cool.
I
Anyway,
didn't realize he went to Vintage. There's
yeah, I
so
think he
many
does.
people, like literally, like I meet people all over, and then I
There's
find out
tons.
later they're like, I'm at Vintage. I was like, what? Like, it's
Yeah, I
crazy.
went to
So,
Church Home. So Judah Smith.
oh
You ever
yeah,
go to
yeah.
Church
I've
Home?
I've gone to
Yeah,
his on. They're like Wednesday nights. I've actually gone
Wednesday
a couple
nights.
times.
So anyway, a friend of mine, I started bringing to that, and she kind of found Jesus, and I baptized her like in the ocean one day for her birthday, and she was
That's
like, "BC,
amazing.
how do I explain my relationship to God? I cannot." She's like, "My family doesn't even. My family hates that religion. Also, how do I explain
Yeah.
it?" And I kind of laughed, and I said, "The way you explain it is like trying to explain your favorite song. Where if I came to you and I was like, oh my God, you have to listen to this song. It like has a saxophone and a piano and it sounds like this. And I'm like trying to
Yeah.
describe the song, I would sound like an idiot. And so I think what it is there's a song that we can hear and which is God. And the way we love people is our dance to the song. And while we're dancing to the song that we can only listen to, we're loving people. And then someone goes, man, you figured out how to enjoy life or how to love people really well. Like how did you do it? And they're asking you what song you're listening to, which invites the conversation
Mm.
instead of trying to project someone. You have to love this song, even though I can't show it to you.
Yeah.
And so I think our relationship with God just comes down to how we show up with kindness and generosity and poise and peacefulness and kindness and love. And then while we're doing that, someone goes, oh, what song are you listening to? And you get to
Hmm.
talk about your faith a little bit or your testimony. But I don't think we need to try to evangelize with words. We just need, like, that's never gotten us anywhere so far.
I
So
100% agree. I think our greatest testimony is our life. Our greatest testimony is
exactly.
how we show up, how we treat others, how we live our lives. Like, if God has truly impacted you, then your life should look different. And if it doesn't,
Totally.
then you're just assigning to a religion. You're not assigning to a relationship.
Totally.
I think that's what I see a
Yeah.
lot of. It's a lot of religion, not relationship with God.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
that's when we get into like the has to be this way, has to be, we have to sing this certain way and these worship songs, and you start to get really like granular. But it's so much like when I see God show up in my life, it's so much more personal, it's so much more relational than
Yeah, it's intimate. It's really intimate. And then we get really excited. And so we become evangelicals pretty quick because we're so excited about the song.
yeah.
We're like, this is the best song I've ever heard in my entire
Like
life. You guys got
everyone
to
needs
listen
to
to it.
hear it.
Yeah. And so, but then we usually push people further away because of that
Uh-huh.
energy. And so our goal is to dance to the song. It's supposed to be humbling. It's supposed to be intimate. It's supposed to be weird. And I went down. I mean, you know, I I think people in America worship the Bible way more than they worship God or Jesus. Like they're obsessed with this scripture that I don't know. I went down deep rabbit holes studying scripture and where it came from and who wrote it and what the intention was behind it. And I think I found, so when I went to the desert, I was 31 years old. It was COVID, and I found out that nature is the church. Nature holds all of the answers. I found out the moon was feminine. I didn't know this. It's a long story, but
Hmm.
basically one night I'm sitting in the desert and this huge pink full moon comes over this mountain, and I'm like outside the skirts of like 29 Palms, Joshua Tree,
Oh, cool.
and I see this moon and I just start crying, and I like went through this like portal of the moon, and I realized at that moment, I can't even really explain it, but it was like the Holy Spirit was feminine, and every feminine experience I've ever had with a woman and with my mom and my sister and like with women I've dated. I just started crying, and I was just like going through this like experience, and it was really divine and amazing. And then I realized that, yeah, I realized nature holds so much secrets and answers. Like if you go into nature, you can really just stop and learn so much about God and love and like the present moment, and we are connected to it all. And then the feminine essence of like the religion has been very masculine. Jesus, is
Hmm.
a man. God is somewhat of a masculine pronoun, and the essence of the feminine's missed out. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you look at nature and you look how every time I go somewhere like that, like even if I love being on water in the ocean, and you just like, when you go snorkeling, like just even snorkeling and you see God's creation, it's like, it
abundance.
reminds you how big God is. You're like, he
Yeah, it's
isn't,
abundance.
yes, like, and his creativity and, um, just ever, I don't know. It's you feel closest in those in that is when you are in nature. I think some Christians would be like, "Oh, that's so foo foo," like
So
the
I mean, yeah, I had
the
no clue.
nature and like. But like I think
Yeah.
there's something to that. Like it's God's creation. Like of course it's going to bring you closer to God. Of course it's going to reveal things. Like we're stepping
Well, have you
into
ever
what
heard of
he
Richard
created.
Rohr?
Richard Rohr. It sounds really familiar. What is he an author?
He's probably like he's probably my favorite author. He's like a priest and theologian, and he's written like some of the most incredible books, but he's written probably like over 50 books. He's smart. He's been a theologian for over 50 years.
Mm,
But he was always be like, yo, nature was our first ever Bible. It was our first
mm,
ever like true scripture of like how orchestrated everything is, how abundant everything is, how it doesn't steal. Nothing in nature takes more than what it needs to survive. If the tree next to it needs water, it takes water from that tree and gives it to the next tree. And when you find that out, you become so humbled in
mm.
the essence that we're connected to nature, that nature is so sacred and it holds so much secrets for us. And a lot of people are really, I think a lot of, I mean, this isn't like this is more of a dating podcast. This is not
I
like,
know.
this is not
Sorry, we've totally gone on a tangent, but I actually really
we,
appreciate this.
we totally have. Cause I'm like, damn, we can go really deep into it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I love being able to have this conversation because I feel like it's I don't know. I never get to have it, so I appreciate
Yeah.
that we did go on a little bit of a of a tangent.
Yeah, I wish there was more. I wish there was more podcasts talking about like deconstructing Christianity and reconnecting with God in different ways. But this is a great podcast. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Dating is awesome. But yeah, no, I mean, I love these topics. Well, because it's
it's
connected,
all
right? You know,
connected.
so
It's all connected.
yeah, and you can
Absolutely.
really see someone's relationship with nature and the way they are in reverence to this, that they can experience this human experience. I think a lot of Christians get caught up in heaven, in this afterlife, when in reality, Jesus was not really concerned where we go after we die. Jesus was really concerned on how we love people next to us.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about that 80% more than where we're going after, we pass away. And so really being grounded in this, like, are we connected to each other?
Mm-hmm.
And you can really tell by if someone's connected to nature.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this was so beautiful. I'm so glad we got to chat.
I know. Yeah, it's incredible. You're so good at asking questions.
I love this. I appreciate it. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming on. I think this was a beautiful conversation. I think, while we did veer into this topic, I do feel like it still goes back to how we show up in this world, dictates a lot of how our relationships look and how our relationships are. Like if we aren't happy with our dating life, we aren't happy with the things, like our relationships in our life, like we have to look at ourselves. Like, how are we showing up? How are we contributing to what it is today? So
100. Yeah, we hold all of the power. We hold all the
we do.
answers. And if we don't like dating, it's because we're avoiding something within
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And dating is just simply holding up a mirror to something within ourselves that we're avoiding. The number one thing women want from men more than anything is just honesty. Even if it is going to hurt their feelings, they just wanted it to be honest. And
Yeah.
right now, women are really frustrated and they're really having trust issues because men have not been honest to them in the past. And so women don't know who to believe because they thought this man who loved them or was genuine to them, they're just like, man, if he's not honest, I don't know who's going to be honest. If my
Yeah.
dad's not honest, I don't know who's going to be honest. And so right now, women are just craving honesty. And yeah.
Yeah. It's like honesty, it's authenticity. Like, I think we're sick of the masks, the sick of the, not being real and open. And I think that's what I think that's what it comes down to. I think a lot of our frustrations, and I think a lot of them are warranted, but it's like we want to feel safe in a relationship. And in order for us to feel safe, we have to know that there's honesty. And that means not hiding behind, that means like, even if there's conflict that might come up, if you bring something up of how you're feeling or anything like that, it's like, we still want that.
Yeah. And I think the more women get closer to their power and their essence of confidence, then they can just call men higher and they can just like challenge men, because men only evolve to where women put the bar. Men, the only reason a man wants muscles, the only reason a man wants money, the only reason a man wants success or power is to get a woman. The end goal of a man is the woman. So money, muscles, power, sex, whatever it is, it's a woman they want. And so women have to elevate the standard in the bar and have to expose men, and not exposure in a mean way, but they have to ask them uncomfortable questions.
Uh-huh.
Like, even I was thinking the other day, man, of a woman being like, hey, I want to talk to the last 3 women you've dated, asking a man that, and just being like, yo, let me talk to before we commit to each other, I need to talk to your last 2 girlfriends.
Yeah.
And the man will either be like, no, I was really, they'll say what they were, or they'll avoid it, or they'll be like, yeah, go for it. I was a piece of shit. I did this, like, they need to be exposed and in order to grow. And yeah, it's tough out there.
And I
but
think that requires some honesty of women also, because I think what I see is women will shy away from asking the hard questions because they don't want to lose the relationship.
Of course.
So they don't want to ask the hard question to level someone up, because they're like, well, what if they walk away? What if they say, oh, I can't meet that? What if they say,
they're too much. Yeah.
Why do you think we sit in situationships for so long? Because no one wants to have the conversation. No one, and I think as a woman, if you want commitment and you want a relationship, the hard part is advocating for and asking the hard question and saying, like, this is what I'm looking for and this is what I want. How do you feel about that? What do you, and I think a lot of the time we're just unwilling to do that. There's this fear in us that, so I think
totally.
it requires the honesty of women also, in that dynamic.
And empowered women scare the hell out of insecure boys.
I get that a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, right? You have this podcast, you have this confidence, you have this maturity, you have this, like, you're gorgeous. And so I'm sure there's like this level of like, oh crap, she's kind of call me higher. And like, I don't know if I'm ready to be called higher yet. Mm-hmm. And they want to, they don't know what that room looks like to enter that door. And so they usually shrivel up, or they kind of like, retreat back in. But it's a good superpower to have. It's definitely just going to be a little bit steeper hill for you at certain times. And the thing, women, a lot of times they date potential, and you can't date potential. You have to really stay in your truth and in your power. If something doesn't feel safe within you, you have to, like, let it go.
Yeah, you have to say, because I was in a relationship not long ago, and
how long?
It was earlier this year.
And how long were you guys together?
6 months.
Okay.
And wonderful man. Like, again, nothing, couldn't still to this day not say anything terrible about him or anything he did negatively, But it was this deep sense of feeling like you're not being honest with who you really are. And it was so hard. He was not being honest, but it was I don't think you even know that. And it was something I could not shake. I tried different ways. And it was hard to tell someone that, because he didn't understand what I was saying.
Whoa. How old was he?
Much older than I am.
How old?
In his 50s, which is wild, because he looked like he was like, everyone's like, oh, he's like 41. Or like, no one.
Oh, yeah, no, girl. Congrats, girl.
Like, I didn't know that even when we first started dating. I didn't know I never asked his age. I just assumed, no, probably somewhere in his 40s, And then I was like, you're what?
Whoa,
like, I was like dumbfounded.
And he was married before?
No, never been married.
Whoa, good for him.
Yeah. So, and he's wonderful, like truly a wonderful man. And I think a lot of people were confused, like, wait, what? He's great. Like, you just let a great guy, And I was like, I just could not shake this off. I was like, I don't trust you. And it wasn't I don't trust you because you're a bad person or you've done anything bad. You've never lied to me, like, intentionally, like, but it was this, like,
intuition.
Yes. It was like, you don't even know who you are yet entirely.
Wow.
And I was like, no, God, why do I have to have this type of sense? But it was so tough. It was one of the hardest conversations I think I've ever had in a breakup, because he didn't understand what I was saying. Was great. He was like, what do you mean? Like, I never lied to you. I would never do that. And I was like, no, you're not. I thought that you've lied to me. No,
it's deeper than that.
You're
an oracle.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. Women are oracles. They know something beyond what men know. They are the portals to heaven. They are the portals that bring life. And so, no, just trust that intuition. And that's like, so what women do at situations like you're in is they do the opposite, right? So they're like, wait, everything is good. So everything else will just be able to work out if we just get married and have kids. It's like this is the safe route. And
Yep.
so when they take the safe route, then comes divorce and child custody battles, and who knows, the pain that's just way harder.
Yeah.
But for women to stay in integrity with their essence of their wisdom, and that's
Yeah,
maturity
it's
for
tough.
sure.
It's really hard. It's like, no, I think it's like what I'm looking for is like, I want someone to be honest if I've hurt them. I want someone to bring up a hard topic. I want someone to challenge me because I'm not a peach all the
Cool.
time, you know? And that in and of itself, I think men fear that, but that's what creates safety. That's what creates intimacy. It's like, I want you to bring your whole self to me. I want, even when I hurt you, I want, even when you're hurt about other things, it's like, how do we create that type of space that we both can open up and be able to be, and that's not something I can force out of someone, You can't force someone to be that way. And it's so tough. It's like you don't see it and I don't know how else to tell you and you can't force it. And, life would have been probably beautiful and would have had kids and had a cute little white picket fence life. Like I saw it. I saw all of it in front of me,
Yep.
And I was like, I just can't. I could not do it. And a
Wow.
lot of people did not
Congrats.
understand that they still were like, I'm sure quite a bit of people thought I was crazy, and they're like, "Well, I don't get
Oh,
it."
I mean, people think you're crazy. You're leaving your job in January. People don't understand that. People. It's not for people to understand.
Yeah.
People call me crazy since day one. And when I went to the desert, everyone thought I was crazy. I left my dream life in LA, and yeah, it's all supposed to be crazy. It's all supposed to be messy, and
it
yeah.
doesn't. Yeah, it's like it doesn't make sense, but it's like it doesn't have to. None of that has to make sense. And it was hard though. I will say, like, I think I really struggled with that because I second guessed I doubted myself a lot. And even to this day, sometimes I think about, did I end it too quickly? Did I not give him, I think the thing I struggled with the most was, did I not give him a chance to level up? Did I not give him a chance to like work on certain things? And I had to let that go because I'm like, it's not something you just like fix overnight,
Yeah, no, it's much deeper.
It's so much deeper. And it was, it was really challenging. And it's still, like I said, I have to like remind myself at the core what it was that, the reason why it ended, and he may never understand, and other people may never understand, but it's
and you may never understand.
Yeah.
It's romantic relationships are without a doubt the hardest medicine and mirrors of all time. There is no was this my person? There is no, did I miss that train and then I missed talking to my lover? Or if me and my lover didn't get in that last fight, everything would have been perfect. Like, there's so many games we play out thinking that there's our person, but in reality, it is God, us, and our purpose. And we magnetize a lover, which is incredible and a blessing and beautiful. But anytime something takes us away from God, our purpose, or ourselves, we get out of alignment. And so just returning back to like, your dream is to help women not have to go through unhealthy relationships or dating insecurities, or this whole podcast is like literally changing women's lives and giving them new perspective and new awareness, and your pain is giving them power. And so continue to stay true to that and connected to that. And anything else, you're going to know within your intuition, within your system, is this going to fuel it? And of course, like, people can change, people can go to therapy, people can heal, people can find God. Like, there's but knowing that within the wisdom of your essence and your womb and your gut, that this is what was true for you on the surface, even though you couldn't understand it, no one else could.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know. So when it goes to quitting your job, when it goes to breaking up with that person, when it goes to divorce, when it comes to any of it, just knowing that, like, yo, this is stupid. This doesn't make sense, but there's something deeper going on. And if God opens up a door to that person being back in my life, then cool, but it just wasn't it. And it had nothing to do with him. It had everything to do with you.
100%.
And so, like, although it was him in essence, there was something within you that felt off in him. And so it was you going back home to yourself. And it's not like all your friends are like, well, what was wrong with him? And it's like, nothing, it was wrong with him. There was this essence that was like off, but like, really, it was how I felt when I was with him. And that is what love is, right? Love isn't the person, it's how the person allows you to feel while you're with them. And when you're with someone and you feel like you could be goofy and weird and fart and cry and be everything, you're in love with the person because you're in love with the version of yourself that you are around them.
Yeah.
And so that's what it comes down to. There was a piece of him that maybe didn't allow you to feel a certain way, and it was medicine.
Yeah. That's exactly. And as you were talking too, I just kind of had a mini revelation. I'm like, maybe it was also an opening for me to become more of who I am also in ending
Done.
that, because
That's
I
exactly
saw
what
it
it
in
is.
him. I was like, oh, you're not being
Boom.
fully yourself. And just in this moment, I was like, maybe I wasn't either. In that.
Exactly.
and
That's it.
and yeah, that's kind of wild. Just had that right now in real
It's
time.
all it's all a mirror. Everything, your family members, your
Yeah.
lover, everything is trying to show you what you're frustrated within about yourself. And so there is no I dated the wrong guy. It's I'm out of integrity with my true frequency. It has nothing to do with that guy being wrong. That guy is perfect in his own
Mm-hmm.
essence. It's you being out of integrity with yourself. And so he just happened to be around and you projected your out of integrity
Mm-hmm.
onto him. But that guy is perfect.
Yeah.
And the more we can just fall in love with our own bodies and our own selves, the more we can feel what safety feels like when we're with an
Yeah.
actual divine masculine.
100%. And in that, I think when you project, you also then try to change the other person. I think when you're not aligned with who you are, and
Oh yeah,
in
women
that,
love becoming the fixers. Women love
oh, we will
finding
find
projects.
fault. We were like, ooh, but maybe if I change this about you, it'll be better. Or if I, and it's
Yeah.
wild how it does stem back to you. Like, it's not, they're on their own journey. Um, and
And are
it's,
you are you are you a Christian that saves sex till marriage? Is that something you're working towards or you're trying?
I have not in the past, but that is something I'm trying now. I think we actually had an episode all about this, but I think I recognize the power of sex and how beautiful it is. And it just made me realize, like, I don't want to keep sharing this with people that are not my person. It's like tainting
Nice.
it for me,
Mm,
and it's not a purity thing. It's not out of, it's just, it's out of honoring what it is,
cool.
and what it means. And I don't think I think in the past I waited because I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to have sex, so I have to wait. But I didn't even know what it meant. Like, I didn't know the importance of it. And I think now in my life, I'm like, oh, wow, it has a lot of weight. And I understand why it was created the way it is. I understand how beautiful it is.
Mm,
And I don't want to keep sharing that with people that are my person, random people.
yeah.
Now, not that not that I ever had like random one night stands, but random as in like not my person. I don't want to keep sharing with people that are ultimately men that are not going to be there in the long haul. So I think that's something I am definitely pursuing now, which is interesting to navigate in dating because it's very rare. Um, but it's just, to me, it's too sacred. It's too sacred to just throw around like we do in society today.
Totally, totally.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I am trying to save it.
That's the goal. Okay, cool.
That is the goal. So,
Awesome.
because I think, like I said, I think it's just, I think having had experienced it, and now I'm like, oh, this is why we're told not to, like, you know, fling
Play
it
with
around
fire.
with everyone. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm curious on where Christians are heading with that topic. I mean, that's a whole different episode, but
Oh my God,
I'm
yeah.
glad you shot an episode on that because I'm curious on where Christians hold the boundary of what even is marriage and what is the rush. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us, if sex is the number one reason someone's rushing into marriage, I would say don't say. I'm not saying this to you. I'm just saying
Yeah,
this to
yeah. In general.
Christians. I would say, yo, if you know this is your person and the only reason you're trying to get her, you can get this piece of paper that says you have the same last name is so you guys have, then I would say probably not have that as the
Yeah,
icing on the cake. But I'm always curious on where people like draw the line because I think it's of course sacred, but it's also very expansive and playful, and not that you could play with it with anyone, but like I think fitting in this cultural rat race of like marriage, piece of paper, $50,000 wedding, then all this stuff is just it's once again it's setting us up for this illusion that we think is the way, which I don't think that I know anywhere in the Bible it says don't have sex before marriage. I don't think it's in there, and I think I don't believe it's in there. I could be wrong, but and then I think back in the day, marriage was like trading your daughters for land and cattle. So it's like this
yeah.
this dance of what even is this thing, but I'm not trying to like tell people to, have sex,
Yeah.
but I'm also just trying to invite Christians, hopefully, into this box that we've created in these religious dogmas of like, you can't live together, you can't sleep in the same bed, you can't do this. Like, I think there's something very powerful with having those morals and those values. But what I've seen play out is people rushing to get this wedding under wraps sometimes leads to divorce. I think Christians
Well,
are the
yeah,
most
and
divorced
making the
religion
wrong,
in America.
yeah, and making the wrong decision because of that. And I think that goes into, in that episode we talked about kind of purity culture, and then also the prevalence of
Yeah.
porn. We really went into that. And I think it
Oh,
was,
cool. What episode? I want to listen to that episode. That's
it's
awesome.
episode, I think 6 or 8. It says like,
Awesome.
let's talk about porn. It's like the title.
Cool.
And it's actually with a friend of mine who's also Christian, and she had a porn addiction. And as a female, talking about a porn addiction is very rare and not spoken of in our community at all. So I really wanted to bring her on to,
Let's go.
yeah,
That's
to share about that, and to like
amazing.
share what that looks like in your marriage and how it affects your sex life and all of that. And but I think like a big part of it, like I don't know anyone now who's save themselves for marriage. Like, I think that's even people who are like, I've tried, like, it's, and again, it's not I don't think it's a badge of honor necessarily, but I think it has to be a choice we have to make for ourselves. Like, I think I had it out of fear a lot, and then it just, then it happened, and I'm like, okay, that wasn't even with someone I love, and it just was like, it just, I'm like, I wish it hadn't, honestly. Like, it wasn't this thing I felt like I missed out with the wrong person, But yeah, I think there's some sacredness to it, and I think that should be reserved for someone who's right for you and the special person for you. I think.
I mean, the only way you're gonna have good sex is if you feel safe in your body. If you feel
absolutely.
safe with this person, and if you feel safe in your womb, in the sense of like, if this is your father of your kid, like, yeah, it's gonna be so hard to have any resistance, and so. Yeah. Anyway, that's a cool. I'm excited to see that episode. Check that episode out.
Yeah. You should listen to that one, because that was really powerful. It's funny because her and I were supposed to have an episode about something totally different, and we had technical difficulties. My internet wasn't working. Her camera wasn't, like, we could not record the episode. We tried twice recording an episode, and I was like, I'm gonna put it to bed, and we're gonna talk about it later. And then one day I was like, I think we're supposed to talk about porn, and I think that's why it wasn't working.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then I texted her. I was like, I think we're supposed to talk about this, and she goes, yeah, I think you're right. And then we did. No technical issues. Like, it is wild how that has happened. That has happened twice. And every time I get crazy technical issues where it's like you can't record, I'm like, we're not supposed to talk about it. Like, we're supposed to talk about something else.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, who are some of your dream guests to have on?
Oh my God, my dream guest. Okay. Oh, I actually have a list. Oh, it's somewhere. I have a list. I would love to have on this lady named Thais Gibson. She has been incredible. She's a psychologist that studied attachment theory, and she's helped me just grow so much in understanding that, and understanding that dynamic of kind of how I show up in a relationship, and kind of gave me words to like, oh, this explains, why in this season of my life I was like this, and this season of my life I was like that. So she would be incredible. And then I think Mark Groves would be fun to interview. He's just kind of like, just kind of wild. I usually don't know what he's going to come out of his mouth. So I feel like he would be super fun. So I do have a list, and I'm like, you know what? I've been reaching out to some people. I'm actually surprised. Like, a lot of people that I've reached out to that have said yes. I was like, oh, you don't even know me. I don't even have a huge following. Like, I don't, and it's been awesome to see people be like, yeah, I'm down. Like, I totally want to do this. And
congrats.
So I'm just going to shoot for the big ones,
Yes, that's amazing.
And see where God takes
I'm honored.
this.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
You're amazing. This podcast is incredible. It's going to do so well, and I can't wait to see where it grows. And let me know if I can ever help get guests, and people that you want.
Oh, I would so appreciate that. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and for having this conversation. I think it's really insightful, and I loved it. I think I got a lot out of it, so I hope everybody else did as well.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.